As soon as Russia invaded, nobody was talking about why Russia invaded. They told me, look, if you get COVID, you're dead. Why would anybody lie about dying of COVID instead of dying with COVID? It was just so completely corrupt from the beginning to the end. The Federal Reserve, that's why they lie to us. It's not their job to tell us the truth. The people who came here from China, I want them gone as soon as possible. Just the idea of him being elected doesn't fix the economy. They've created an enormous amount of inflation, and it's going to take a hell of a lot of hard work and some suffering for it to go away. Joe Biden had stolen his wife. He met her because his best friend had this super hot wife. Well, that guy ran the United States for 4 years. Big and corn fed, I just think, is truth in advertising. I'm 6'7", I weigh 290 pounds. I look big and corn fed. And I have been to Nebraska once. Awesome place. Loved it. I fit right in. I found out just recently that there's such a thing called a polymath. And a polymath is someone who just loves to learn. I did not know that math meant learning. Who knew? So a polymath is somebody who loves to learn about everything. And I've had a passion about learning ever since I dropped out of high school. Think about that for a second. I dropped out of high school, by the way, to join the Marine Corps so I could go fight bad guys. And after the Marine Corps, I decided I wanted to be rich, so I became a stockbroker, still without a high school diploma or a master's degree in whatever. After becoming a stockbroker, I figured out that I absolutely cannot stand people on Wall Street. They will eat their own children, period. They're just the worst human beings in the world, with the exception of some politicians. I decided that after that, I was going to take a little time off, maybe, 6-8 months, and figure out how econ really works. And I figured if I had to eat top ramen for a few months until I figured out how the economy worked, how hard could that be? 8 years later, I'd had my share of top ramen, and I finally started to understand the economy. After that, I got into the gold and silver business because, well, if you know anything about gold and silver or economy, you understand what I'm saying. I got into that business, but I've always had a passion about archaeology, anthropology, astronomy, solar science, marine biology. I mean, just name it. So I thought, how do I do this so that I can learn myself and also help other people learn? Podcast. So here I am. A shorter list of things that will not be covered on this podcast are sports, entertainment. I really don't care who's doing what with whom in Hollywood. I was born and raised in Hollywood, and I have absolutely no interest in talking about stars or their lives or their hobbies or whatever. As far as sports, I think that most sports are a complete waste of time. It's just like the Romans. It's bread and circus. It's to distract you from trying to fix the world. With the exception of combat sports, which I think are very important because sometimes violence is the answer. So I love combat sports. And that's it. Other than that, we're going to talk about a lot of science, a lot of goofy, nerdy stuff, because inside this enormous walrus of a body, there is a nerd trapped in here. And I'm going to let him out.
Let's go into it. How's 2025? Obviously, Trump's back. So what's your thoughts?
I told the people that follow me on TikTok on Big and Corn Fed that, and this was last year, I did a lot of live streams. And I told them last year that if Trump were elected because of the Chevron deference case, and I'll explain that in a second, because Chevron deference being overturned and Trump at the same time coming into office would mean that I would make half as much money this year in the silver and gold business, in the bullion business, as I would if Kamala Harris were elected. And the reason for that is, even though just the idea of him being elected doesn't fix the economy is still in really deep, deep shit. And it's going to take some time to sort that out. Even in the best case scenario, we're looking at a couple of years of very hard times. However, I also knew that the panic buying wouldn't happen. If Kamala Harris were elected, I knew that every Republican in this country would panic buy bullion. So knowing that ahead of time, when Trump was elected, metals just tanked, and they have literally been flat ever since. Now, that's not because there's no room for growth. And it's not because the economy's perfect. It's simply because people are starting to have a little more faith that the economy can become good again. And the reality is this: if the American people want the economy to be better, it will be better, period. That's why people don't understand. That's why the Federal Reserve, the Fed chairman, Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, that's why they lie to us. It's not their job to tell us the truth. Their job is to make sure that the economy is okay. And if they came out and said, oh my God, this is fucking horrible. We don't know what to do. This is worse than we even thought it was going to be. Well, that's it. The economy's over right there. That is it. This country ceases to exist economically. If they come out and they say, well, based on the numbers, we're feeling pretty good. It's pretty good. That's total horseshit. On the other hand, the average ignorant American, and when I say ignorant, not stupid, but they're ignorant of economy. They don't understand how it works. Fine. Kick-ass plumbers, great electricians, they're great carpenters, whatever, but they just don't have the time after, a 10-hour day to come home and study econ. So they just take the expert's word for it. And that's why they can't tell us the truth. Because the truth is that they've manipulated the economy, they've dumped too much cash in, they've created an enormous amount of inflation, and it's going to take a hell of a lot of hard work and some suffering for it to go away. That is what it is. Beyond that, I think that we're going to spend billions and billions of dollars, probably tens of billions of dollars, deporting illegal immigrants. Now, how do I feel about that? I think that there are a lot of illegal immigrants in this country who came here for the right reasons. And they want to work, they want to earn a visa, they want to get citizenship, they want to do everything right. But they were desperate to get the hell out of their country for whatever reason. I do have a little bit of a soft spot in my head for them. The people who came here from, I'll give you an example, China. I want them gone as soon as possible. And it's not that I don't like the Chinese. I love the Chinese. However, if you look at China, let's just say, let's put us in the situation where we're both Chinese, okay, we're fighting age males, and we decide, you know what, we're going to go seek asylum in the United States. Let's get the hell out of here, man. All right, good. Let's go. How? Well, let's see. We could walk across the border into North Korea. No, that's not going to work. We could go through, no, shit, Russia's 10 time zones, and they're not going to let us through the border. Nepal. Why didn't we think of that? We'll just go through Tibet, over the Himalayan mountains and into Nepal, and then we'll slip into India. Oh, shit, that's right. India doesn't want us to cross the border illegally. Well, I guess the only way out of China is if they let you go. If the Chinese government lets you go, that means they want you to go. And if they want you to go, it means they want something from you. There are approximately, based on what I can gather from news reports, et cetera, there are approximately 300,000 fighting age men from China in the United States right now. That makes me a little nervous because that adds up to some really kick-ass asymmetrical warfare. And asymmetrical warfare is symmetrical warfare, to give you the other side, would be where the British and the Americans lined up on the battlefield and shot at each other from close range. Well, that just comes down to numbers mostly. Asymmetric warfare is what we adapted in the United States in order to kick the British out because they outnumbered us. And that is guerrilla warfare, et cetera. Not to alarm anybody. However, having said that, a Barrett is a type of sniper rifle, 50 cal. It's got about an 800 grain bullet. Puts a bullet downrange about 2,300 feet per second. Because of the size of the bullet and how fast it's moving, it generates about, if I'm not mistaken, 16,000 pound-feet of energy, which means that a guy with a Barrett sniper rifle and say 4 or 5 rounds at $4 a piece, by the way, the rifle's about 10 grand, could punch a hole in an electrical transformer. Now, these things weigh about 800,000 pounds. They cost millions of dollars. You can only get them from either South Korea or Germany, and they take years to replace. I can punch a hole in one with a 50 caliber Barrett in a heartbeat, and it's completely destroyed forever. After reading all of the stuff from the Senate subcommittees, et cetera, I know that if you take out 9 substations in the United States, pretty much any 9 substations, the entire grid for the United States collapses. That's something that has to be taken care of immediately. Because do I think the Chinese specifically would do it? Not necessarily. Do I think anybody with more than, say, 18 terrorists in this country? That's all it takes is 18 guys. If you have a guy with a rifle and a spotter, and you have 9 of those guys in different parts of the country, and you take out these substations, that's it. That's not okay. As far as immigration goes, yeah, we need to get on that right now. Because there's a part of me that thinks that the former administration wanted something like that to happen so that they could then go balls to the wall, full 9/11 mode and start wars all around the world again, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully that's not going to happen. It's odd to say that there is a Republican in the White House who is a peacetime president. But,
they're already looking at it. What do you think of what's going on with Putin, what he's been saying recently? I mean, and obviously the ceasefire in Gaza, if that's even a thing that's going to continue or not. What are your thoughts on all those? And, you don't have to be political about it, but I mean, whatever.
Right.
I mean,
well, here's the thing. The Gaza thing and the Ukraine thing are very different for me because Ukraine and Russia, obviously, they've been neighbors for, about 4.5 billion years, based on how old the earth is. Those countries are up against each other. The people who have lived there have gone back and forth, and the Ukrainians and the Russians have some history because of World War II, et cetera. But I believe that can be worked out. The ethnic Russians in the Donbass region, they want to live their life, et cetera, et cetera. If we can get to a point where the Ukrainians understand that, maybe the Donbass can go back to them. If they're not willing to acknowledge that, if they're not willing to put some protections in there for the ethnic Russians, the Donbass will have to stay independent. That's it. And that'll be done. As far as what's going on in Israel and Gaza, you have 2 groups of people who have very strong is a good word, strong opinions about a lot of things. And I look at most religions, and as a guy who studies a lot of science, I say, what? I mean, what else can you say? When, one guy walks on water and the other guy flies a pony through the sky in the middle of the night to whatever. It's just, it's just crazy stuff. So the message from both of these religions seems to be, we're it, nobody else matters, and that's that. Well, okay. They say good fences make good neighbors, and that's what Israel tried to do. On the other hand, if the fences are too big, they're not fences anymore. They're prison walls. So, you're talking about 2 groups of people who have had a hard time settling anywhere. Over thousands of years, Palestinians, now over the last 100 years, Palestinians have had a hard time settling anywhere. Jordan doesn't want them. Egypt won't take them. It's like, okay, so what's going on here? If the Arab nations don't want these Arab people, why? Well, that's like talking about gypsies. There's no way to do that without pissing somebody off. So just don't. And then, of course, the Jews, that's their country, according to them. And all I can say is I don't want anything to do with it. I would rather sit back with a large bowl of popcorn and just watch as opposed to getting involved. Because there's nothing we can do that's gonna make any sense. Putin, on the other hand, he's very transactional, and he's and I've watched a huge amount of his speeches. And the more of his speeches you watch, the more inclined you are to think that he is either incredibly, incredibly good at acting, or he might actually be a very genuine leader. He's Russia first. My people are the most important, period. And I'll do whatever it takes to protect them. However, I don't mind having relations with anybody else. Like, let's work out a way that we can all make money. We just literally, when I said that, we just stepped right into Trump's territory because he's very transactional. All right, I'll do for you. What do you do for me? I see the two of them being able to work together really well, like really well. And, I've had a problem hating Russians since Cold War ended. And we figured out that Russians are just a bunch of crazy, crazy people just like us. And, what do we know about Russians? Well, they love their mama, they love vodka, and they love suffering. They enjoy suffering more than any other group of people. They're very proud of how well they suffer. And that's great. They're tough people. Okay, why can't we get along with them? So I think that, they've been the boogeyman, the straw man for 70, 80 years now. I think that's over. It's time. It's time to, we've got to find.
What about your opinions on Ukrainians, and what do you think that our relations with them and Zelensky, and also what do you think that they're thinking and their mentality is?
In about the year 2000, somewhere in that neighborhood, I was reading the non-official Guinness Book of World Records, a bunch of, titles that you might not necessarily want. Who's the most obese nation? Who's got this? The most alcohol consumed on planet Earth was Kyiv. And it was an average of 1 liter of vodka per day per person. Wow. Now, remember, there are some old people that can't drink a liter of vodka, and there are a lot of children who just don't drink yet because, they're just not old enough. So that means that the average adult probably takes in a lot more than 1 liter of vodka per day. That tells you a lot. That tells you a lot about the people, because it is a cold, hard place to live, and it's a lot like Russia, although the Ukrainians would probably be pissed if they heard that because,
Do you think, though, their values are different? Do you think they have more traditional values, or do you think they're...
No, I'm pretty sure that the title of most corrupt country in the world was the correct title for them. And that's the when you think about corrupt countries, any country that has a government is by default corrupt, because governments are all corrupt. They're all bad. The best government you can hope for is one that you dislike. On average, you hate them, and you should hate them, because Thomas Paine in Common Sense, first thing that he said on page 1 was that societies are formed for the best of reasons. So that you can do trade, trade ideas and sort of come together, learn things from each other. But whenever you have a society, you've got bad people in that society. And those bad people have to be basically scared into submission by even worse people. That's called the government. So you get a bunch of guys with guns, and they make laws, and they tell you what you can't do. And that's what the government is. They say, well, we're here to protect you. Well, how do you protect me? By telling you what you can't do. Oh, okay. Well, what can I do? Well, anything we say that you can't do, you're allowed to do. Okay, well, I'm so glad you guys showed up. And the problem is, if you don't have that, nature abhors a vacuum, so you're going to have a vacuum of power, and then it's just going to be some fucking warlord that comes in.
Yeah.
Somalia, that's what happens. So you have to have a government, but they all suck ass. They're terrible. So if you just pray for one that's not quite as bad as the rest. That's it. That's all you can do. And right now we've got one that I'd say maybe a little over half of them I don't hate. The other, third to half, I absolutely can't stand. I don't trust them at all. I was raised a Democrat. I grew up a Democrat. I was in the Marine Corps. I was a Democrat, for Christ's sakes. That's hard to do.
Can you talk about that? Because did you switch, or do you think that the party lines have changed?
It's a combination of both. The values of the different parties has changed, partially because when Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, he said, we just lost the South for 100 years. or a generation. The quote changes. And that's true because the people of the South hated the idea of Republican, businessmen smoking cigars and drinking bourbon and prostitutes and all that. That's what the Republican Party represented. But they hated the idea of black people being able to do everything they can do even more because it was so racist back then. So, he was right. They lost the South, and they lost a lot of Democrats. So what happened was the Republicans early in the 70s realized that, hey, wait, we got a lot of disenchanted people. Let's try to make our politics a little bit more Christian, which didn't really work at first, but they kept at it. And by the time Reagan came into office and, past that, Bush Sr. really wasn't anything. I sounds odd because he was director of the CIA and he was obviously a very well-connected guy, but, you don't look at him and go, oh, he is anything. He was the president. By the time Junior got in, the Republican Party had reimagined itself as a very Christian group of people. Whether or not that's true, totally different. But that was their marketing program anyway. But really the change happened for me when COVID hit. And I was still, at that point I had decided that I didn't like Democrats or Republicans. And that is true pretty much to this day. I would say that because I know too much about econ, I'm a little bit above politics, because politics is for people who want to be in a tribe. It's very tribal. Politics is how we sort of define ourselves as a group. I don't define myself that way. I define myself as a businessman. And businessmen tend not to be all that religious. I don't know how, but there are scientists who say they're religious. That makes absolutely no sense to me at all, and I don't trust their science anymore when they say it. But the point is that, when I look at the United States of America and I look at what happened during COVID, man, that was shocking to me. It was as shocking as when we were talking about how horrible the Ukrainians were for killing ethnic Russians, and this whole thing about Nazis, and these militias that were just going in and killing men, women, children, the whole nine yards in the Donbass region. And the United Nations was saying, look, this is getting close to where we're going to have to call this a genocide. And as soon as Russia invaded, within a week, we'd forgotten about all of that. Nobody was talking about that at all. Nobody was talking about why Russia invaded. It was now completely and totally without any provocation or reason. What about the 10 years that Putin was trying to get people to pay attention to the fact that, hey, I got Russians right here on my border that are getting killed, and I'm not cool with that? Well, then none of that mattered anymore. How did we forget that fast? How did the American people forget that fucking fast? Over the course of 3 weeks, we went from, oh yeah, those evil Nazi militias to, oh my God, those poor Ukrainians. They never did anything to anybody, and look what happened. That's just completely insane to me. That is as insane as what happened with COVID. If you did any research on COVID, you were a kook. Well, wait a minute. Aren't I supposed to do any research? No research. If you do research, you're crazy. Well, why? Because we did the research for you and we're telling you what the truth is. Okay, but what if the truth changes over the next week? Well, then this is the new truth and you don't question it. But it's different than the last truth. Fucking shut up, you psycho son of a bitch. What are you going to start a podcast now and you're going to be like that crazy guy from Texas who believes that everything is a conspiracy? Well, no, but you said one thing last week and you're saying something completely opposite this week. Yeah? What's your problem, pal? It's like, oh, Jesus Christ, what is going on here? And so because of that, and because they told me, look, if you get COVID, you're dead. Based on what the CDC is saying, the NIH, if you get COVID, you are a dead man. Because, anybody over 40, if you got more than 10 pounds, by the way, the camera adds 35 pounds. Just saying. But I do have an extra 10. But my point is that, they basically said, look, your blood pressure is a little high, you're a little overweight. If you get COVID, it's going to kill you. So I had to tell both of my teenage daughters that, look, you guys can't come and go to school because that's dangerous. So you either have to stay home and do everything remotely, or you can go live with your mom. But, I don't really want that. And so they went and lived with their mom so that they could keep going to school instead of doing it all at home. And so now I look back at the fact that all of that was total bullshit, complete and utter bullshit from the word go. The odds of me dying from COVID as a healthy over 30 and then some guy is, I want to say that it was 4 out of 1,000. So for every 1,000 guys in my exact situation that got COVID, 4 of them died. Now, did any of them have pre-existing conditions? Probably. I mean, shit, they might have had pneumonia when they got COVID. Who the fuck knows? Because they never told us the truth. Oh, they died of COVID. Did they die of COVID or did they die with COVID? Oh, well, same thing. Okay, so he was shot 4 times in the chest with a .44. And then when they did the autopsy, they realized he had COVID. So he died of COVID, not lead poisoning. Sounds like bullshit to me. So why would anybody lie about dying of COVID instead of dying with COVID? Well, gee whiz, if you're in a hospital and you get a lot more money for people dying with COVID or treating COVID, whatever, it was just so completely corrupt from the beginning to the end that I realized, okay, the Democrats are in charge now. The Democrats, the guys behind the scenes made Trump look like a complete asshole because they lied to him. Fauci literally lied to the president of the United States. And now he's been pardoned. He can't be prosecuted for it. What the fuck is that? That is just, that means that as long as you commit crimes for the right people, you can get away with it in this country. There is no law. What? Wait, when did that start? About a month and a half ago with Hunter Biden. Wow. Okay. In a perfect world, the Democrats won't recover from this for about 2,000 years. And they shouldn't, because this was the most disingenuous administration I've ever seen in my life. And, look, did I like Clinton? No, I thought he was kind of a cheesy, kind of a whore, which a lot of guys in that situation are. That's their ego drives them. So when a cute young girl says anything to them, it's like, oh my God, stop everything. I'm getting attention from a girl. That's the way those guys are. They're all ego. However, when he left office, there was a surplus. Okay. Jimmy Carter. Everybody loves to talk about what an asshole he was as a president. He may not have been a great president, but he was a great man. Absolutely. When you actually study his life and what he did in the Navy and as an engineer, etc., the guy was a fucking genius. What he tried to do with the United States, the deep state wasn't going to let him do it because the deep state was brand new at that point. I believe that the deep state, which is code for the military industrial complex, that's really what it is. The intelligence agencies and the military industrial complex are just hand in glove. They literally go everywhere together. They're like Siamese twins. Because look, you can't overthrow a country unless you got a little military action going. So, you get some defense contractors to sort of accidentally ship all those weapons to that one country. And it's like, oh shit, I thought we would. Anyway, well, turns out those, 10,000 machine guns went missing. Bottom line is, even Carter was, I think he might have been the last super honest president. It could have been Reagan. I don't know. I go back and forth about Reagan because I think he was a good guy. And the stories that I hear about him from people inside the White House at the time, even the stories that are meant to be precautionary tales, still paint him to be a good person. Maybe not the sharpest tool in the shed, but a good person. I hear stories about Biden when he was vice president, and it's like, I know somebody who is in, let's just say, was very close to the vice president. And in his capacity, he had to do a lot of traveling with the vice president specifically. Never the president, always the vice president. And he said he wouldn't tell me anything specific because clearly it's classified. But he said even the personal stuff that Joe Biden and his family talked about in his presence was absolutely disgusting. And at the time, this was before Biden was elected, and I knew he was kind of a bullshit artist, but so what? Aren't they all? I thought maybe he's a good guy. I hadn't really studied. I didn't know about his plagiarism and all the bullshit. I didn't know that he'd stolen his best friend's wife. Who does that? Yeah, I mean, that's how he met his wife, Dr. Dipshit. Literally, he met her because his best friend had this super hot wife. Guess how his friend found out that his buddy Joe Biden had stolen his wife? He saw them together in Joe Biden's Corvette and said, "Hey, what are they doing together in the middle of the day?" That's the kind of guy he is. That's like, I think that for most men, that's all you need to know right there. Like, that guy who would steal your girlfriend if he had a chance, the guy that never gets invited.
Friends with that guy.
Never be friends with that guy. Well, that guy ran the United States for 4 years. And I think it shows. It really shows. So, hopefully we'll get past that pretty soon. But yeah, I think 2025 economically is going to be a shit year. I don't think it'll affect us as much as it should because there are so many people that are so hopeful. I mean, I know that there are a lot of woke people out there that are very upset right now, but the reality is this: they'd be upset because they realize that this is a day that ends in Y. Oh my God. Because they're just nihilist turds who have literally, in the man's world, you've got the alpha, the guys that are alphas, and you got the guys that are sigmas. Those guys are dicks. They're just all dicks. Some of them are very good at what they do, but it's a very popular thing to say, "Oh, I'm a sigma." Well, then you're a dick. Because as a guy who was in the Marine Corps with a lot of tough fuckers, we always knew who the sigmas were. Because they were the dicks. They were the guys who just didn't want to be a part of a team. They always fucked it up by trying to do it themselves. And then eventually they would get beaten into submission and they'd be a part of a team. But sigmas are just dicks. Then you've got the guys way at the far end, the omegas. Those are usually the guys that are woke. Those are the ones who, because a beta, by the way, everybody's terrified that they're going to be considered a beta male. Those fuckers hold the entire country together. Literally, without beta males, nothing would get done because those are the guys who, they don't have any ego. They don't need to be the toughest guy in the world. They don't give a shit. They just want to do the right thing. And part of a team, hell yeah, they're part of a team. Do they need to be in charge? They don't actually even care. They don't want to be in charge. Like, give me a job and I'll go do it. They're usually the best guys to be in relationships with. But, it's true. Like the alpha guys that are always large and in charge are usually a pain in the ass. They're high maintenance. And that's because the social contract is, if the building's on fire, I'll fucking run into it. I will run into it and I will save whoever's in there, even if it means I get killed. If somebody tries to break into our house, I'll be the guy that handles it. But I get to be a total pain in the ass in exchange for that. I get to be a prima donna. And not that I'm a prima donna, because I'm not. Anyway, So the point is that betas are guys that are just chill. And we all, like, most of us have friends that are betas. And they're just chill dudes. You know, alphas don't hang around together necessarily because we get on each other's nerves. Like, if it's a competitive thing, you want a bunch of alphas with you. And then as soon as that's over, go the fuck away because you guys are annoying, you know? But beta males are just the cool dudes. They're the chill dudes that you want to hang out with. So, and they're best in relationships. Omegas are the woke ones. They're the ones who have given up. They're nihilists. They don't like themselves, and they fucking hate you because they think everybody's better than them. There's not even necessarily a reason that they think that. They just think that. And because of that, their attitude is, oh, I hate that guy.
Could be the brain chemistry, and they could be depressed hereditarily.
Look, I'm not saying that woke is like a mental illness necessarily. Maybe. Okay, that's what I think. I said it. But bottom line is, you know, the whole woke ideology. It's crazy. It's like, okay, perfect example. You know, you talk to somebody who's woke, and they're like, yeah, you know, religion's so stupid. You know, they talk about, like, you know, feeding 5,000 people with 2 fish. That's so fucking ridiculous. Oh yeah, that's ridiculous. It's almost as ridiculous as thinking that there are 37 different types of genders. It's like, wait a minute. Literally, you are making fun of people who believe something that you think is ridiculous, and your entire world view is based on ridiculousness. So, sorry, man. You know, we got a good running start today. We talked about politics. We talked about religion. We talked about economy. Basically, I think what we talked about was everything that you're not allowed to talk about at Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah. Which, by the way, is kind of what I do. You know, look, I try not to offend everybody. Okay, that's not true. I try to offend everybody. That's basically it. Democrats, Republicans, Christian, Jews, Hindus, not so much because I just don't know that much about them yet. But I'll get to you. Wait. Anyway, so yeah, that's what we do here. And we try, at some point I'll talk about sciencey stuff too. There's a nerd inside of me that's screaming right now, why have you ignored me so? We'll get to that too. Solar science, end of the world stuff, I'm all over it. So we'll talk about that too.
Where can they follow you?
Oh, shit, where can you follow me? You can follow me on TikTok. You can follow me on YouTube under BIGnCornfed, at BIGnCornfed. And then on TikTok, at BIGnCornfed. And it's big letter N, cornfed, BIGnCornfed.